Hello, my name's David Benarroch from Manchester. I would like to give you a quick introduction to the Kodesh ability tests. They're used here in the UK in virtually all the main schools in London, Manchester and Gateshead by thousands of children, and hopefully it will be of benefit to your school or Moised. Kodesh ability tests, known as CATs, ensures every child, if capable, we're not trying to push any child that's not capable, is on track to leave school fluent and independent in Gemoro, Rashi Tosfos and Chumash Rashi for the boys, and just Chumash Rashi for the girls. It was created with the data from over 1,200 children across the UK. Now it's got several thousand children, and we're continuously adapting the standards. The idea is that the tests are conducted every 6 months, starting from about age 8, that's at Tolas Chumash, all the way up to Yeshiva, and for Gemoro starting typically around the age of 9 or 10 whenever they start Gemoro until the Talmud goes to Yeshiva. We have different leaving ages. Some children leave school here in the UK at ages 15, go to yeshiva. Some, particularly the girls, are leaving at 16 and go to the seminary. Other schools, the children leave at 17 or 18, and the CATS program is adapted for the different leaving ages. It's a very simple system, which we'll explain. How does CATS actually work? As you'll see in a moment, everybody gets the same test regardless of age, and they will get a score based on a number between 1 and 100. A score of 100 would indicate that they have fluency in the Gemoro Rashi Tosfos test, and the score of 100 would also show fluency in the Chumash Rashi test. Obviously, there's different targets depending what age the Talmud is. So, for example, you might expect a Talmud who's age 11 to 12 to score a target of about a score of 56, whereas somebody who's 15, 16, you would expect to score a total of 90. And the idea is that they keep on working until they get to this score of 100, which would show fluency in either of the two tests, the Chumash and the Gemoro test. What are we actually testing when it comes to CATS? I'd like to go the following model. Let's imagine we took an article from the Le Monde newspaper, French newspaper, and we would give it to someone. Well, a child in school might know 50% of the words if he was studying French. Someone in university might know 80–90% of the words. But for someone to score 100% of those words and know those words, it's only someone who's had a huge amount of exposure to the language and would understand all the slang, the jokes, all the nuances, the financial terms, etc. Well, it's the exact same case here by CATS. We're taking random words and we're asking the children to translate them. So someone who would get a score of 100, it's only after they would have tremendous exposure and learning to achieve that sort of score of 100. You couldn't just remember a huge amount of words off by heart to score 100, because there's thousands of words that are involved in Gemoro and in Chumash. One thing we're not testing on this is Havana. Very often Rebbes and Menalim have come to me and said, David, why don't you test for Havana? That's not the purpose of these tests. That's for the Rosh Yeshivas, for the Magidi Shurim, for the teachers, the Rebbeim, to develop skills in Havana. It's almost Matnas Elakim, really, what a person can understand. The purpose of this is to give the Talmud the ability to be able to learn with a chavrusa and have a basic understanding of what the sugya is or the chumash that they're learning. It's up to the Rosh Yeshivas afterwards to, as I said, the Rebbeim to develop that skill in Havana. This is an example of one of the question papers. As you can see, it's multiple choice. On this side over here, we have all the Hebrew words, and over here they have to circle the right answer. There's a choice of 5 answers, and they circle the answers. As you can see, it's a multiple choice and it's computer marked. This way, there's no administration for the school. We do absolutely everything for the school. We print them, and we do all the marking and print all the results as well. In fact, even the names of the Talmidim are already pre-printed on the actual sheet. So there's literally no work at all for the school. They just hand them out in envelopes to the correct classes based on the lists that we have received beforehand from the school. The idea is it's based on psychometric testing, so it starts with very easy words and then goes all the way to harder words, and there's a total of 50 questions. It takes 10 to 15 minutes to complete the whole test. So for example, let's say in Chumash we would start with very easy words, for example lifnei, sodeh, ochiv, and as we move along we've got harder words, vatimale, ochela, and we'd move on to the harder words down by questions of 50. The words, for example, like mona, omal, and kerach, ta'a, those sort of words. In Gemoro, similar as well, we start with very easy words. Afapi, amalahu, minohanimile, lefichach, seifa, and then we move on to sort of harder words that you would typically expect in Tosfos, and only boys who've had significant exposure to Gemoro Rashi Tosfos would be able to answer. For example, words like itoisav, mirsas, gisa, shuma, agar, icy, those sort of words. The tests, as we said, are done every 6 months. Every test is a different test, and we do that for test security. Although we take test security very seriously and we don't allow anyone to keep the test, if some Rebbe teacher decided not to be ehrlich and keep the test and spoon-fed those words to the Talmidim, wouldn't help, because next time there'd be a completely different test. However, all tests are moderated to the exact same level using quite complicated mathematical algorithms based on the original data that we produced. So for example, on question 28 on one test, there was 49% of respondents got it correct, but on another test only 48.9 respondents got that question correct. We would make small mathematical adjustments to make sure that each test is on the same level. So there's typically about 1 to 1.5% maximum spread of difference between the different tests that we would use, which for psychometric testing that would be considered well within an appropriate range. Test results are produced in 2 formats, one for the parents, which is an example here, and one for the school, for the senior leadership team, which we'll see in a moment. So let's deal with the one first of all for the parents. First of all, you can see here every child gets their own individual report. It's done as a table, and below it's also done as a graph. Over here you have the age of the pupil and which year he's in. Over here you've got the pupil's results. And over here you'd have the expected target for that pupil. And again, what we're trying to achieve is that when the pupil leaves in this school, for example, the leaving age is between 15 to 16, when the pupil leaves at that age, which is year 11 and a half in the UK, they will have achieved that target of 100. It doesn't matter which country they would come from, the Talmidim, whether it's the UK, US or Australia. If the idea is that they leave school fluent in Gemoro Rashi Tosfos or in Chumash Rashi, then these tests are appropriate for those children. So here, for example, let's see Beryl, fictitious name, Beryl Cohen. Beryl Cohen is at year 7, that's ages 11 to 12. he's got a score of 68 and the target for him is 72, so he's just slightly less below the target, but anything within 10% of the target, that's considered on target. And you can see that on the graph. You've got the green area and the orange area and the red area. If they're 25% or more below the target, they're in the red area. If they're 10 to 25% below target, they're in the orange area, and anyone else is within the green area. So for example, let's see this pupil here. This pupil originally started a bit below target there, sort of around 25% below the target, and slowly sort of pushed his way up into the green zone, showing that he's on target, and he's certainly now on target to achieve this score of 100 in a couple of years' time. And the idea of this system is to stop any Talmids leaving school in this sort of position over here, which is probably a score of 70, 80, 90. He's obviously not got special educational needs because he's got a relatively good score. But the question is, why is he not on target? Perhaps nobody's really paid attention to see that he's on target in his learning, and that he's actually probably quite capable of getting a score close to 100. And probably if this had been picked up early on in his school career, a lot more things could have been done. For example, the father and the mother could have been involved doing more chazorah with the child. The father could have, for example, got a private rebbe. The teacher, the rebbe in school, could have done more to help push the child a little bit up. And that's the idea of this whole system, that no one should fall through the net, and every child who's really capable of it should be on target to achieve that score of 100, which, as we said all along, would show independence and fluency in either Gemoro, Rashi Tosfos, or Chumash Rashi. This is an example of what the senior leadership team at the school will receive: a report of all the pupils. We've got 4 pupils here altogether. These are the years that they've been through. We'll come back to that in a second. And you've got over here the year average for each class, and over here you've got the target where they should be. So let's start pupil by pupil. We've got Avram Cohen here. Now, he first started taking these tests in year 3, the second half of year 3, which is about age 7 to 8, and he scored 49. 6 months later, 56, 54. Yep, he went down 2 points. That does happen. They're not always going to be making progress, but hopefully over a couple of years they will be. And he's currently in year 7. That's about age 11 to 12. He's currently on a score of 78. He's coloured in green. That shows he's on target. Nothing to worry about there. We move down to the next pupil, Binyamin Cohen. This is obviously a fictitious class here of just 4 pupils. Binyamin Cohen here started off in the orange zone, so that was 10 to 25 below. A little bit of a concern, does need extra monitoring. Dipped down into the red zone, which is more than 25% below the target, so that does need investigation and intervention. And eventually you can see he picked himself up, and now he's currently in the green zone of 68. Again, nothing to worry about where he is. Moving down, we've got Dovid Cohen. Started off a bit in the orange zones and also picked himself up into the green zone. Nothing to worry about. Eli Cohen is someone who struggles, mostly in the red zone. Would certainly need further investigation to see why he's more than 25% below his peers, and one would see that there's adequate sort of chazorah at home. Maybe he does need extra rebbe or some more professional sort of input. Down here, as we mentioned, we've got the year average, so you can see exactly how the class is performing and how they've made progress. So this is the average of all the pupils, and you can see how the average is 67 for all those boys there. The results can be displayed as either the entire year, or we can also split them up in classes and years, so you can see how each class is performing. So if you've got several mixed ability classes in that year, we can have a separate table for each class that can show, first of all, if the classes have been balanced correctly by checking the average score, but also you can check the progress of each individual class. And then the bottom line shows us the target where the Talmidim should be for that age. So in year 7, the Talmidim should be up to 72. The average in the class is 67. So quite a few of them are hovering around that 72. All those ones in green, they're more or less within the target. That's why they're coloured green, and there's nothing to worry about. The one to be concerned about would be this pupil over here, Eli. Some Rebbeim and the Nalim have commented to me, are we not putting children into a box by saying, oh, this is where you should be at this age? We're putting them in a box. So the answer to that really is that the children are already in a box. In this school, they leave at 16 and they have to go off to yeshiva, seminary. We're not in a system where some of the gifted children leave at 12 and the others stay on to 20. Everybody has to leave at age 16. So they're already in a box. And I think it's really important that we do our utmost now that they're in this box to make sure they achieve their potential and have the opportunity to go to the yeshiva and the seminary that they're actually capable of. And if anybody is not achieving, then through this system it can be identified very early on, and from my experience, probably in 90% of the cases, it can be rectified without professional intervention. Just more attention being given to that child, whether it's from the home or from the school.